My breath caught the moment his hand closed around mine. Francis Cross, the most powerful alpha tycoon in the city, stood before me, his deep gray eyes piercing through to my very soul. I was just a 17-year-old Omega, invisible to everyone, especially someone like him. But today something felt different. "You're trembling," he said, his voice a low rumble that wrapped around me like the warm blanket I'd never owned. I tried to pull my hand away, but his grip was firm yet protective. I couldn't understand what was happening. Just 30 minutes ago, I'd been sitting alone in my tiny rental room, staring at a piece of stale bread that was supposed to be my birthday dinner. Today was my 17th birthday, but tomorrow at midnight I'd turn 18 and my presentation would begin. I'm fine," I managed to say, attempting to step back. But the truth was far from fine. My body felt weak, my omega scent probably leaking out from hunger and exhaustion. I hadn't eaten anything substantial in 2 days. My part-time job at the convenience store barely covered rent, and this month had been particularly brutal. The store owner had told me last week that I was too weak for the work. This was my final week before he let me go. Francis's jaw tightened visibly. "When did you last eat?" I remained silent. How could I tell him? How could I explain to this alpha, who probably had everything, that I'd gone to bed hungry on my own birthday? That nobody even remembered I existed? That I was completely alone in this world? Actually, I barely remembered walking from the convenience store to here. All I recalled was a sudden wave of dizziness, then colliding with his shiny black car before my legs gave out. "Answer me." His thumb brushed gently across my knuckles, sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. I looked into his eyes, those storm gray eyes that somehow made me feel like I actually mattered. 3 days ago, I finally admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "At the shelter." His eyes darkened further, and I watched a muscle tick in his jaw. 3 days? And you've had nothing today?" I shook my head slowly. My rent was due. I had to choose between food and keeping my room. "On your birthday." His voice was flat, but I could feel the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "Tomorrow at midnight I turn 18. That's when my real birthday begins." I didn't mention that tomorrow would also mark the start of my presentation, when I'd become vulnerable to every alpha as my omega scent fully bloomed. Francis remained silent for a long moment, simply studying me. Then suddenly he made a decision. "Come with me." "Double." "Where?" I stammered. "To eat. Right now." This wasn't a request, it was a command, though one that felt protective rather than dominating. I hesitated. "But I can't go anywhere like this." I glanced down at my faded hoodie and torn jeans. "You look perfectly fine," Francis stated firmly. "And if anyone has a problem with it, they'll answer to me." "Come on, Joe." The way he said my name, Joe, as if he knew it, as if he cared, made my heart race. I forced my weak legs to cooperate and began walking beside him, knowing somehow that my life was about to change forever. His car was sleek and expensive, exactly what I'd expected from someone of his status. The leather seats were soft beneath me, as I carefully climbed in, hyper-aware of my shabby appearance against such luxury. Francis didn't seem to notice or care as he slid into the driver's seat with practiced ease. "There's a restaurant not far from here," he said, starting the engine. "They know me well." That last part made my stomach twist with anxiety. Of course they knew him. He probably ate at expensive places all the time, surrounded by other wealthy people who belonged in that world. And here I was, about to walk into that environment looking like I'd just crawled out of an alley. "Francis," I began hesitantly, "I really don't think—" "Stop," he interrupted gently, but firmly. "Whatever you're about to say, whatever excuse you're forming, just stop. You need to eat. I'm going to make sure you eat. Everything else is irrelevant." I fell silent, watching the city lights blur past my window. The streets grew cleaner, the buildings taller and more pristine. We were heading into the heart of the financial district, the part of town I'd only ever seen from a distance. When Francis finally pulled up to the restaurant, a valet immediately approached. I watched in mild horror as Francis handed over his keys without a second thought, then came around to open my door before I could do it myself. I started. "I know you can," he said simply. "But I want to." His hand found the small of my back as we walked toward the entrance, and I felt the warmth of his palm through my thin hoodie. The touch was grounding, somehow making me feel less like I was about to walk into a lion's den. The restaurant's facade was elegant, all glass and warm lighting that spilled onto the sidewalk. Through the windows, I could see well-dressed patrons enjoying their meals, soft conversation and laughter creating an atmosphere of comfortable wealth. This was so far removed from my world that it might as well have been another planet. "Mr. Cross," the doorman greeted with a respectful nod, pulling open the heavy glass door. Francis acknowledged him with a slight nod of his own, his hand never leaving my back as he guided me inside. The interior was even more impressive than the outside. Crystal chandeliers casting soft light across pristine white tablecloths. The quiet notes of a piano playing somewhere in the background. Every detail screamed luxury and refinement. I felt every eye in the room turn toward us, or more specifically toward me. I could practically feel their judgment, the tattered hoodie, the worn jeans, the obvious poverty that clung to me like a second skin. My confidence began crumbling with each step. "Maybe I should wait outside," I murmured, taking a half step backward. But Francis's hand pressed more firmly against my back, keeping me moving forward. "You're staying right here with me," he murmured, his tone leaving no room for argument. Something in his presence calmed my omega instincts, reassuring me that this would be okay. A host in an impeccable suit approached, his professional smile firmly in place. "Mr. Cross, wonderful to see you again. Your usual table?" "Yes, thank you, Marcus," Francis replied smoothly. As we followed Marcus through the restaurant, I kept my eyes down, trying to ignore the whispers and stares. But Francis seemed completely unbothered, his bearing confident and assured. When we reached a table by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, he pulled out my chair himself. I sat awkwardly, my hands fidgeting on the white tablecloth, unsure what to do with myself. Francis settled across from me with natural grace, and when Marcus offered menus, Francis waved them away without even glancing at them. "We'll have the chef's special course, the complete tasting menu." My eyes widened. "Francis, that's too much, Joe." The way he said my name stopped my protest cold. He leaned forward slightly. "When I ask you something, I need the truth." "Understood?" I nodded slowly. "Good. Now tell me, where is your family?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been expecting more questions about my eating habits. Not this. I looked down at my hands, suddenly finding the pristine tablecloth fascinating. They're gone," I said quietly. I bounced around between shelters until I could afford that room. Got the part-time job at the store. Thought I could make it work. My voice cracked slightly. But last week the owner told me I was too weak. He fired me. When rent came due, I had to choose. Francis's eyes remained locked on mine, intense and unwavering. "And you chose the room. Winter's getting worse." I thought if I could just hold on for a few days, I'd find another job. Hearing myself say it aloud made it sound even more foolish than it had in my head. "How old are you, Joe?" Francis asked, though I suspected he already knew the answer. 17, 18 at midnight tomorrow." I paused, swallowing hard. "That's also when my presentation will happen." His entire body tensed at that. Presentation, every Omega's most vulnerable time. When their scent fully blooms, when their body heat spikes, when they become exposed to any alpha nearby. And I was going to face it alone in that tiny room with no protection whatsoever. Francis opened his mouth to respond, but the arrival of our first course interrupted him. A waiter placed delicate plates before us, some kind of appetizer that looked more like art than food. Then came another plate, another roasted chicken with herbs I couldn't name, creamy pasta that smelled divine, fresh bread still warm from the oven, a colorful salad, and even dessert waiting on a side cart. My stomach growled embarrassingly loud at the sight and smell of so much food. Francis's lips curved into the first real smile I'd seen from him. "Eat, Joe. Please." I couldn't resist any longer. I started slowly, trying to maintain some dignity, but hunger quickly won out. Each bite tasted incredible, flavors I'd forgotten existed or had never experienced before. I'd been surviving on whatever cheap food I could afford, and even that had been sparse lately. This was something else entirely. Francis watched me the entire time, not eating much himself, just observing. But he wasn't judging. There was something else in his expression. Concern? Maybe. or satisfaction that I was finally getting a proper meal. When I finally stopped, my stomach pleasantly full for the first time in weeks, shame crept in. I'd eaten so quickly, so desperately. What must he think of me? Thank you, I whispered, barely able to meet his gaze. Francis leaned forward, pushing his water glass toward me. Drink. Take your time. I accepted the glass, realizing he was teaching me, showing me how to eat properly, how to pace myself. Nobody had ever done that before. Nobody had ever cared enough. Joe, Francis said once I'd set the glass down, I can't send you back to that room. My heart stopped. What do you mean? Your presentation is tomorrow. You cannot be alone during that. It's dangerous. His voice carried absolute conviction. You'll stay with me, tonight and for as long as you need a safe place. I can't do that, I said, panic rising in my chest. You don't even know me. You need help, Francis interrupted quietly. And I can provide it. So I will. Something in his words, in his tone, broke through my resistance. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Or maybe it was simply the first time in my life someone had genuinely offered to care for me. Okay. I finally managed, barely audible. Okay. Francis exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath waiting for my answer. Let's get you home then. As we left the restaurant, I had no idea where I was going. But for the first time in forever, I didn't feel quite so alone. The drive to Francis's place was quiet, but it wasn't uncomfortable. He didn't try to fill the silence with meaningless conversation, and I appreciated that. My mind was racing too fast to handle small talk anyway. What was I doing? Going home with a stranger, an alpha I'd just met? But somehow, my omega instincts weren't screaming danger. They were humming contentment, recognizing safety. We pulled into an underground parking garage beneath one of the tallest buildings in the financial district. Francis parked in a spot marked reserved penthouse, and my stomach flipped. Of course he had the penthouse. The elevator ride up was smooth and swift. When the doors opened directly into his apartment, because of course the elevator opened into his apartment, I could only stand and stare. The space was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated one entire wall, showcasing the glittering city spread out below us. Everything inside was sleek and modern. Clean lines, expensive furniture, art that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. I glanced down at my faded clothes and felt the weight of not belonging crash over me. Here's the guest room, Francis said, gesturing toward a door off the main living area. The bathroom's attached. You'll find towels and clothes in the closet. They'll probably be big on you, but they'll work. I could only nod. The guest room alone was larger than my entire rental. Get cleaned up. I'll put together some snacks in case you get hungry later. Francis continued, trying to make this seem normal, but we both knew nothing about this situation was normal. Francis, I said, his name feeling strange yet right on my tongue. He stopped, turning to face me. Why are you doing this? We're strangers. You saw me collapse a few hours ago. Why do you care? He was quiet for a moment, his back to me again. Then he turned slowly. Because I know what it feels like. What? To be alone. To go to bed hungry. To think nobody in the world gives a damn whether you live or die. He took a deep breath. 10 years ago I was in a similar place. Maybe not exactly your situation, but close enough. Someone helped me then. I promised myself that if I ever had the means, I'd help others. I stood speechless, processing this. Francis Cross, billionaire alpha tycoon, had once been like me, and he hesitated before continuing. When your scent hit me as you fell, it was different. Your omega scent isn't fully developed yet, but what was there, it affected me more than anyone else ever has. His gray eyes met mine directly. So yes, maybe this is more than just kindness, but I can't let you get hurt, Joe. I just can't. My heartbeat accelerated. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? Get some rest, Francis said, abruptly changing the subject as if he'd made himself uncomfortable. Tomorrow's a big day, you'll need your strength. I retreated to the guest room, closing the door behind me, and took my first proper breath. This was real. I was in Francis Cross's home, and tomorrow, my presentation would begin. But this time I wouldn't be alone. The shower was heaven. I stood under the hot water for longer than necessary, letting weeks of stress and grime wash away. When had I last had hot water? The shared bathroom in my building had been broken for days, leaving only cold water that made my already weak body shiver violently. I found the clothes Francis mentioned, a soft cotton t-shirt and sweatpants that were indeed too large, but felt comfortable in their looseness. They smelled like him, that sandalwood scent with something warm underneath. My omega instincts purred at being surrounded by his scent, which should have alarmed me but somehow didn't. The bed was absurdly comfortable, like sinking into a cloud. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind refusing to quiet despite my body's exhaustion. Tomorrow at midnight, everything would change. My body would transform, my scent would intensify, and I'd become vulnerable in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. "Joe? Are you all right?" Francis's voice came through the door. "Yes," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. The door opened a crack, and Francis peered inside. "Can't sleep, just thinking," I admitted. He stepped fully into the room, leaving the door slightly ajar. "About tomorrow?" I nodded. Francis moved to sit on the edge of the bed, maintaining a careful distance. "I want you to know something. Presentation is scary. I won't lie about that. But you're not alone, Joe. I'll be here. The entire time. Do you understand?" "But why?" I pushed myself up to sitting. "You don't have to take responsibility for me. I don't want to be your burden." "You're not a burden." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "And if we're talking about responsibility, then yes, I want to be responsible for you. If you'll let me." Tears pricked at my eyes. When had anyone last cared about me like this? Never. Literally never in my memory. "Hey," Francis said softly, moving closer when he saw me struggling. "It's okay to cry," and I did. The floodgates opened, years of loneliness, fear and pain pouring out all at once. Francis pulled me into his arms, holding me against his chest and simply let me break down. He didn't try to fix it with words, didn't tell me everything would be fine. He just held me, his hand moving in slow circles on my back, his alpha scent wrapping around me like a protective cocoon. When I finally calmed, I became acutely aware of how close we were. My face pressed against his chest, his arms creating a shelter around me, and for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely safe. "Thank you," I whispered into his shirt. "Try to sleep," Francis murmured. "I'm right next door. If you need anything at all, just call out." "All right." He stood but paused at the door. "Happy early birthday, Joe." Then he was gone, leaving the door cracked open and his lingering scent surrounding me. I closed my eyes, breathing in that sandalwood warmth, and for the first time in weeks, maybe years, I fell asleep feeling protected. But sleep didn't last long. I woke to moonlight streaming through the unfamiliar windows, momentarily disoriented. Where was I? Then memory returned. Francis, the restaurant, this guest room. I checked my phone. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until midnight. 13 minutes until I turned 18 and my presentation began. My body already felt strange. Warmer than usual. My skin more sensitive against the soft sheets. Was it starting early? Could that happen? I tried to calm my racing thoughts. Francis said he'd be here. I wasn't alone this time. But what if something went wrong? What if my presentation was more intense than normal? What if a sharp cramp seized my abdomen, making me gasp? Okay, this was definitely starting early. My phone showed 11:51 now. 9 minutes. I should call Francis. He said to call if I needed anything. But what would I even say? "Hey, I'm about to start my presentation early and I'm terrified." That sounded pathetic even in my own head. Another cramp, stronger this time. My temperature was rising. I could feel it. My omega scent was beginning to leak out, filling the room with that sweet vanilla and rain fragrance that would soon bloom into something far more intense. 11:55 p.m. 5 minutes. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. I pulled up Francis's contact. He'd entered his number during dinner, insisting I have a way to reach him. My finger hovered over the call button. What if he was asleep? What if I was bothering him? What if another cramp doubled me over? Forget pride. I needed help. But before I could press call, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened wider and Francis appeared, already dressed despite the late hour. "You're awake," he said, not sounding surprised. "How did you know?" I managed between shallow breaths. "Your scent. It's changing." He moved closer, his gray eyes assessing me with concern. It's starting early, isn't it? I nodded, unable to form words as another wave of heat rolled through me. All right, listen to me carefully, Joe. This is going to get intense. But I need you to remember you're safe. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. His voice was steady, anchoring me. Your body is going to go through several stages tonight. The heat will increase. Your scent will become overwhelming, and you'll feel things you've never felt before. It's all normal. What do I do? My voice came out small, frightened. You trust me. He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could feel his presence but not touching yet. And you let me help you through this. I checked my phone one last time. 2 minutes until everything changed. Francis must have seen me looking because he gently took the phone from my shaking hands and set it aside. Time doesn't matter right now. Just focus on breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Can you do that for me? I tried, but my breaths kept catching. The heat was building, my skin felt too tight, and my omega instincts were screaming confusing messages. Danger, safety, need, fear, all jumbled together. Joe, look at me. Francis's hand cupped my face, forcing my eyes to his. You're going to be fine. I've got you. Midnight arrived not with fanfare but with a sudden overwhelming rush of sensation. My body temperature spiked, my scent exploded outward, and every nerve ending came alive with hypersensitivity. I heard myself cry out, curling inward against the onslaught, and through it all Francis's steady voice kept talking, his presence a lifeline in the chaos. I'm here, Joe. I've got you. You're safe. Just breathe. That's it. You're doing so well. I'm right here. My presentation had begun, and unlike every fear-filled scenario I'd imagined, I wasn't facing it alone. Francis Cross, the powerful alpha tycoon who'd caught me when I fell, was keeping his promise. He was here, and somehow, that made all the difference. The transformation hit like a lightning strike at exactly midnight. One moment I was lying in bed, tense with anticipation, and the next my entire body was consumed by fire. Not literal flames, but an internal heat so intense I couldn't tell where my skin ended and the air began. My omega scent exploded outward, sweet vanilla mixed with fresh rain and something distinctly mine, filling the room with an overwhelming fragrance that would draw any unmated alpha from blocks away. This was it, my presentation, and the pain was excruciating. Far worse than any description I'd read or heard. Oh God, I gasped, curling into myself as another wave of heat crashed through me. My body temperature spiked dangerously high, every nerve ending hypersensitive, and my muscles cramped in ways I didn't know was possible. The scent was so strong I could barely breathe through it. Francis, I called out, my voice breaking. Francis, please. The door burst open within seconds. Francis stood there, his gray eyes wide with concern, but I noticed something else. Gold flecks had appeared in his irises, glowing faintly in the dim light. His alpha was responding to my scent, recognizing an omega in distress. Joe. He was beside me instantly, his hands hovering as if unsure where to touch, without causing more pain. I'm here. Focus on your breathing. In and out. Slow and steady. It hurts so much. I managed between gasping breaths. My body felt like it was tearing itself apart from the inside, reshaping, transforming. Please, make it stop. I can't stop it, but... He paused, and I saw the struggle on his face. My scent was affecting him powerfully. His jaw was clenched tight, his muscles rigid with restraint. I can help ease it, but I need your explicit consent for what I'm about to suggest. Anything, I said desperately, tears streaming down my face. I'll agree to anything if it helps. Scenting. If I scent you properly, your omega will recognize the alpha presence and calm down. The transition will become bearable. His eyes locked onto mine with absolute seriousness. But Joe, you need to understand. Once I scent you, every other alpha will know you're under my protection. You'll carry my scent. They'll recognize you as claimed. This isn't a small thing. Through the haze of pain, I tried to process what he was saying. Claimed, protected. His scent marking me as belonging to him. Under any other circumstances, I'd need time to think, to consider the implications. But right now, with my body feeling like it was being ripped apart, I could only give one answer. I don't care about other alphas. I forced out, please just help me. Francis didn't hesitate after that. He moved onto the bed beside me, carefully pulling me into his arms, and then his face buried itself in my neck right where my scent gland pulsed hot and active. The moment his scent mixed with mine, the moment that sandalwood and alpha pheromones combined with my vanilla rain, something fundamental shifted. The pain didn't vanish completely, but it transformed into a dull ache I could manage. My breathing evened out. My racing heart began to slow to a more normal rhythm. And my omega, the instinctual part of me I was only just beginning to understand, started purring. Actually purring with contentment at having this alpha's scent surrounding me. "Is that better?" Francis murmured against my neck, his lips barely grazing my sensitive skin. "Yes." I breathed out, but now I was acutely aware of other things. The solid warmth of his body wrapped around mine, the protective cage of his arms, the way his scent seemed to seep into every pore, claiming me on a level I hadn't known existed. My omega was practically singing safe, protected, home. "Happy 18th birthday, Joe," Francis said softly, pulling back just enough to see my face. His hand came up to my cheek, his thumb gently wiping away tears I hadn't realized were still falling. Some birthday celebration this turned out to be. I attempted a weak smile. "The worst of it is over now," he promised, his voice certain. "Your body will continue adjusting throughout the night. You'll have more heat waves, but they won't be as severe as that first one. My scent will help guide you through each one." I looked into his eyes, those gray eyes with gold flecks still visible, betraying his alpha's continued alertness. "This must be difficult for you." "My scent, I mean. It's designed to attract alphas, and you're right here." Francis closed his eyes briefly, and I saw the tension in every line of his body. "Your scent is extraordinary, Joe. Any alpha who catches even a hint of it will want—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "Will want what?" "Will want to claim you for themselves." He opened his eyes again, and the intensity there made my breath catch. "But you're marked with my scent now. They'll know to keep their distance." "And what about you?" The boldness came from somewhere deep inside, probably my newly awakened omega pushing me to ask. "Do you want to claim me?" Silence stretched between us. Francis's jaw tightened, his body going rigid. "Joe, you don't understand what you're asking." "I understand perfectly." I shifted closer to him, driven by instinct and something deeper. "I just turned 18. I'm going through my presentation. And there's only one alpha I want near me right now. Only one alpha I trust." "I'm 32 years old," Francis pointed out, as if that should matter. "That's a 14-year age gap. That's significant." "I don't care about numbers, Joe." "Francis." I reached up, cupping his face the way he'd done to mine earlier. "You saved me. You fed me when I was starving. You gave me shelter when I had nowhere safe to go. And now you're here, helping me through the most terrifying night of my life. You're the first person who's ever truly seen me. So yes, I know exactly what I'm asking." Something in him snapped, the last thread of his carefully maintained control. He kissed me, and it was nothing like the gentle touches we'd shared before. This was deep, possessive. Claim. It spoke of promises and protection, and something fierce that made my entire world narrow down to just this moment. Just this alpha, just this kiss. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Francis pressed his forehead against mine. "I will protect you, always. Do you understand that? This isn't temporary. This isn't just about getting you through your presentation." "I understand," I whispered back. The rest of that night became a blur of sensations. Francis stayed with me through every heat wave, holding me when my body temperature spiked, scenting me when my omega grew restless, talking me through the moments when panic threatened to overwhelm me. He never left, never complained, never made me feel like a burden. When morning finally came, when the first rays of sunlight streamed through the windows, I had fully transformed. I was a presented omega now, complete and changed, and wrapped in Francis's arms, surrounded by his scent. I felt something I'd never experienced before in my entire life. I felt like I'd finally found home. Morning arrived with a strange sense of lightness. I felt different, not just physically changed, but somehow more settled, as if pieces of myself had finally clicked into place. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back. My eyes seemed brighter, more luminous. My skin had taken on a subtle glow. I was a fully presented omega now, and the transformation was visible. Francis was in the kitchen when I emerged. moving around with practiced ease as he prepared coffee. He turned when he heard me, and something in his expression made my heart skip several beats. There was warmth there and possessiveness, and something deeper I didn't quite have a name for yet. "How are you feeling?" he asked, handing me a perfectly made cup of coffee. "Different. Better, actually." I took a sip and realized he'd somehow figured out exactly how I liked it, even though I'd never told him. More like myself, if that makes sense. "It does." He hesitated, setting down his own cup. "Joe, we need to discuss something important." My stomach immediately knotted with anxiety. Here it came, the conversation where he'd tell me I'd overstayed my welcome. That now that my presentation was complete, I should start looking for somewhere else to go. That his obligation was fulfilled. "Look," Francis said quickly, apparently reading my expression, "I'm not asking you to leave. That's not what this is about. Actually, it's the opposite." "The opposite?" He pulled out his phone, turning the screen toward me. Social media was open and I was apparently trending. Mystery Omega spotted with Alpha Tycoon Francis Cross. Who is he? Francis Cross finally claims someone? Breaking Cross Enterprise CEO in secret relationship. There were photos us leaving the restaurant together. My face wasn't clear, but Francis's was unmistakable. I scrolled through the comments, each one making my stomach sink further. Probably just another gold digger. Poor Omega probably trapped him with presentation sent. He doesn't even look wealthy. What could Francis possibly see in him? I couldn't finish the sentence. "This is a problem," Francis admitted, his voice steady. "But not for me, for you. The media attention will be intense, invasive, and..." He paused, his jaw tightening. "My company's board members aren't pleased. Your reputation," I whispered, horror dawning. "I'm destroying your image. Everything you've built." "Stop." Francis took my hand firmly. "You're not destroying anything. Those people have outdated ideas about what's appropriate for a CEO. They think having an Omega mate shows weakness or poor judgments." The muscle in his jaw ticked. "I don't share their opinion." "Francis, this is your company, and you're mine," he stated simply, as if it were the most obvious fact in the world. "If I had to choose between the company and you, Joe, I'd choose you. Every single time." Tears welled in my eyes. "But why?" "We barely know each other, because when your scent first hit me, something fundamental changed inside me." He moved closer, his gray eyes intense. "Because you didn't see me as a wealthy alpha to exploit, you saw me as a person. And because..." He hesitated, showing vulnerability for the first time. "Because I've spent years keeping everyone at arm's length, building walls. But with you, those walls just don't seem to matter." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it and sighed heavily. "Board meeting. I have to go." "I should stay here," Francis said firmly. "Please, you're safe here. And Joe," he looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch, "in a few days, when you're ready, I want you to consider staying with me officially. Permanently." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't just want to protect you temporarily. I want you here with me. As my partner. As my..." He paused, the word heavy with meaning. "As my mate. Think about it. Please." Then he was gone, leaving me standing in his kitchen, completely overwhelmed. I spent the day exploring the penthouse, trying to process everything. Living with Francis permanently? Becoming his mate? Everything was moving so fast. Yet somehow, despite the speed, it also felt right. Natural. Like this was exactly where I was supposed to be. When Francis returned that evening, he looked exhausted. His tie was loosened, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. "How was your day?" I ventured. "The board wants to meet you." He removed his tie completely, draping it over a chair. "They're concerned your presence is negatively impacting the company's image with shareholders." "Then maybe I should..." "No." His voice cut through my suggestion like steel. "I've already told them. You're with me. If they can't accept that, they're welcome to find a new CEO." "Francis." I was genuinely shocked. "You can't Joe." He crossed to me, taking my face in his hands. "I spent years building that business. But it's just a business. You're real. You matter. I'm not losing you over boardroom politics. But if you lose your company, then I'll build another one. But I can't replace you." He kissed my forehead gently. "Understand?" I nodded, overwhelmed by the certainty in his voice. "There's something else," Francis continued. his tone shifting. They've requested a formal meeting. They want to assess you personally. See if you're suitable. My stomach dropped. Assess me? Like I'm some kind of product? It's their mistake, not yours, Francis said quickly. But if you're comfortable with it, maybe it's an opportunity. A chance to show them exactly what I see, that you're strong, intelligent, and worthy of respect. I don't know if I can. Fear crept into my voice. I'll be with you the entire time. If anyone disrespects you, we walk out immediately. His hand squeezed my shoulders reassuringly. But Joe, this is your choice. I won't force you into anything. I took a deep breath, considering part of me wanted to hide from the scrutiny, but another part, maybe my newly awakened Omega, or maybe just my own stubborn pride, wanted to prove them wrong. Okay, I said finally. I'll do it. Not for you though. For That's exactly the right reason, Francis said, and the approval in his voice warmed something deep inside me. That night, as he held me close, I felt something shift between us. This wasn't just about protection anymore. It wasn't just about getting me through my presentation. This was becoming something real, something deeper, and maybe, just maybe, I was brave enough to see where it led. The morning of the board meeting arrived too quickly. I stood in front of the mirror wearing the suit Francis had provided. Simple but clearly expensive, tailored to fit me perfectly. It made me look more put together than I'd ever felt in my life, though my hands still trembled as I adjusted the collar. Ready? Francis appeared behind me, his reflection meeting mine in the mirror. Not even remotely, I admitted honestly. But I'm going to do it anyway. His hand found mine, squeezing briefly, a small gesture that somehow steadied my racing heart. The Cross Enterprise building was impressive, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. As we rode the elevator up, I focused on breathing, on keeping my Omega instincts calm. Francis's scent helped, that sandalwood presence that now felt like safety. The conference room was exactly as intimidating as I'd imagined. A massive glass table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs occupied by serious-faced individuals. 10 board members, all powerful alphas and betas, turned to assess me as we entered. I felt their judgment like a physical weight. Mr. Joe, the head of the board, an older alpha named Daniel, spoke first. His smile was polite but cold. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I nodded, taking the seat beside Francis, hyper-aware of every eye tracking my movements. Let's speak plainly, Daniel continued, leaning back in his chair. Francis is our most successful CEO. However, your relationship with him has become a concern for our shareholders. They worry that an Omega mate might cloud his judgment, potentially damaging the company. I forced my jaw to stay relaxed, my expression composed. We need to understand, a beta woman further down the table added, what value you bring to Francis's life in a professional capacity. This was the moment. I could sit quietly, let them judge me, accept their assessment, or I could stand up for myself and show them exactly who I was. I don't bring professional value, I said clearly, and whispers immediately rippled through the room. I'm not a business expert. I don't understand finance or corporate strategy. I've never worked in a boardroom. Daniel's eyebrow raised, clearly surprised I was agreeing with their concerns. However, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I give Francis something business can't provide. I remind him that he's not just a CEO, he's a person. When stress overwhelms him, I help him find calm. When pressure threatens to crush him, I help him remember perspective. Yes, I'm an Omega. Yes, I'm young. Yes, I don't fit into your world. But Francis chose me not because of what I am, but because of who I am. The room had gone completely silent. And if your concern is that I'm clouding his judgment, I looked directly at Daniel, then perhaps you're the ones with flawed judgment. Francis built this company from nothing. He's made every decision deceitfully, including choosing me. If you can't trust his judgment in his personal life, why do you trust him to run your entire company? Dead silence. Then slowly, several board members nodded. Daniel studied me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You have more courage than your appearance suggests, Mr. Joe. I'm a lot of things that aren't immediately obvious, I replied quietly. Clearly. Daniel turned to Francis. You chose well. This Omega is far from ordinary. Francis's lips curved into a subtle smile. I tried to tell you. The meeting continued, but the tone had shifted. They asked questions about my background, my plans, my understanding of the scrutiny I'd face. I answered honestly, refusing to pretend to be something I wasn't. When we finally left, I was shaking with an adrenaline crash. "You were incredible," Francis said in the elevator, pulling me into his arms. I was terrified, I admitted against his chest. "But you stood your ground, exactly like I knew you would." He tilted my face up, kissing me gently but with underlying passion. "I'm so proud of you, Joe." Warmth spread through my chest at his words. "Let's go home," Francis murmured. "Home," I repeated, tasting the word. It felt foreign yet perfect on my tongue. "Yes, our home, if that's what you want." He looked at me hopefully, vulnerability clear in his expression. I smiled, feeling tears prick my eyes. But these were happy tears. "Yes, I want that." As the elevator ascended, carrying us away from the boardroom and back toward the penthouse, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. Just a week ago I'd been alone, starving, terrified of my approaching presentation. I'd had nothing and no one. Now I had Francis. I had a home. I had a future stretching before me with possibilities I'd never dared imagine. It all started with a whisper. I slept hungry on my birthday, spoken to no one in particular as I collapsed against a stranger's car. But that stranger had been Francis Cross, and he'd heard me. Really heard me. He'd seen past the poverty, past the weakness, past everything that made me invisible to the rest of the world. He'd seen me, Joe, just Joe, and decided I was worth saving, worth feeding, worth protecting, worth keeping. The elevator doors opened to the penthouse, and Francis guided me inside with a hand on my lower back. Our home. The words settled into my heart, finding a permanent place there. I'd spent my entire life feeling like I didn't belong anywhere, like I was just passing through, never quite fitting, never quite enough. But standing there in Francis's penthouse, his scent surrounding me, his presence beside me, I finally understood what belonging felt like. "What are you thinking?" Francis asked softly. That a week ago I couldn't imagine tomorrow. And now, I turned to face him fully. Now I can't imagine tomorrow without you in it. His eyes, those storm gray eyes with gold flecks that appeared when his alpha surfaced, looked at me with such intensity it stole my breath. "You'll never have to," he promised, pulling me close. "I'm not going anywhere, Joe. And neither are you." I buried my face in his chest, breathing in that sandalwood scent that meant safety and home. My omega purred with contentment, recognizing its alpha, its mate, its future. Outside the windows, the city glittered with a million lights, each one representing someone else's story. But this story, this unlikely, impossible, beautiful story, was mine, and it was just beginning.